It's official, Dune Part 3 and Avengers Doomsday are both set to release on December 18, 2026. But is Doomsday really the next Barbenheimer? Short answer? No. Long answer? It's complicated.
What do you want for theory alone?
Travel back in time with us for a moment, all the way back to 2021. Seems like another life, right? The pandemic is still very much a thing. Warner Brothers decides to release all of its upcoming movies on HBO Max in order to make up for all those theater tickets that aren't being sold. Christopher Nolan, who's long been releasing his movies through Warner, says, what the f***? He bails, signs a pretty sweet deal with Universal Pictures, and gets to work making Oppenheimer. Skip ahead a bit to 2023. The pandemic is finally over. People are yearning for the communal experience of watching a movie in theaters like never before. Ahead of the release of Oppenheimer, the powers that be at Warner Brothers decide to shuffle a few things around and release Greta Gerwig's Barbie on the same day. Take that, Chris. Who do you think people would rather look at now that they can finally see stars on the big screen again? Two of the most beautiful people in the world? Or miserable, emaciated Cillian Murphy? Get out of here, that'll teach you to cross us. But then come the memes, followed quickly by a fed of counter-programming so successful that it earns its own portmanteau, Barbenheimer.
Some things have been happening that might be related.
Both companies reap massive benefits that neither of them could have predicted. When all is said and done, the joint opening weekend is the 4th highest ever in the history of American cinema. How's that for a happy accident? Okay, now come on back to 2026. Sorry about it. Warner Brothers and Disney decide to release Dune Part 3 and Avengers Doomsday on the same day. They try to play it off like this wasn't intentional at first, but come on. It's obvious they're hoping lightning will strike the same place. RDJ and Chalamet officially coined it as Doomsday before TikTok users even have a chance to do so. The memes once again start to flow like spice, and the manufactured hype continues to build. Unlike Barbenheimer, it's all on purpose this time. That being said, we definitely wonder if this whole thing might end up backfiring in some way. Some publications like Variety think this is pretty much impossible. They point to the stellar performances of previous Dune and Avengers movies, and we can't argue with them there. But hear us out. By intentionally creating the same conditions before audiences have a chance to do it themselves, Warner and Disney are basically begging for a different result. Pop culture isn't science, it's chaos. You never know how people are going to react to any given thing. Without audiences being able to feel like they themselves spurred on another cultural phenomenon, it's very possible that people ditch the idea of seeing both movies back to back, and instead just veer towards whichever one has better reviews. As such, one movie would perform really well while the other fails. That would be the worst case scenario. The best case scenario, of course, is that the two films enjoy massive success on par with Barbenheimer. But there is a catch in this instance that we feel is pretty much unavoidable no matter what. Such success will be due to each film's respective merits, not the Doomsday marketing scheme. One of the main reasons we think that Doomsday might not have the same effect is because the contrast between Dune and Doomsday isn't anywhere near as jarring as it was between Barbie and Oppenheimer. This is what made the Barbenheimer memes so great. Remember the one where Dr. Oppenheimer is carrying Barbie through one of his fiery post-apocalyptic ruminations? Or what about the one where a pink-colored mushroom cloud looms in the distance alongside the tagline, "Come on, Bobby, let's go party"? The absurdity of this comically mismatched pairing was charming in all the best ways, and it was easy for anyone with decent Photoshop skills to take the ball and run with it. The memes for Doomsday, on the other hand, are pretty much meh so far. There just isn't really much going on there. Mostly because Dune and Doomsday have a bit too much in common with each other. Without the charm of two very unlikely things being mashed together, it's basically as bland and pointless as simple word association. The only charming thing about Doomsday is the pun itself. The potency of memes is one thing, but what about the question of target audiences? A big reason the Barbenheimer phenomenon resulted in such massive profits for both films was that whole counter-programming thing we mentioned earlier. The two warring studios cast such a large net that the double feature aspect of Barbenheimer ended up bringing in a ton of extra people to each movie. Boyfriends ended up seeing Barbie, girlfriends ended up seeing Oppenheimer, or vice versa. We're not here to perpetuate stereotypes. The bottom line is that the complete lack of overlap between the two respective audiences was the winning ticket in the end. When it comes to Dune and Doomsday, there is a lot of overlap, so it's basically impossible for this sort of thing to happen again. Also, both films statistically skew more towards a male audience specifically. According to some stats provided by Vista Group, males accounted for about 70% of the audience for both previous Dune movies. As for MCU stuff, the stats vary based on what movie we're talking about, but male audiences always end up outweighing female audiences. One of the most telling examples of this is The Marvels. Even for this female-centric installment, 61% of the overall audience was male, according to the Wrap. Taking this into consideration, we have to wonder how the numbers will add up in the end for Doomsday. Another thing to consider is how much different things are this time around in terms of the state of the world. As we previously mentioned, the Barbenheimer phenomenon came on the heels of the pandemic. People were primed to leave their houses and have a communal experience at the movies. Things were finally looking up after a long period of darkness and uncertainty. It was a straight-up magical experience to head off to the movie theater with friends and spend 5 hours in front of the big screen. In 2026, all those post-pandemic sparkles have long since faded away. The state of the world right now, well, let's just say
Chaos reigns.
while people were really missing each other in 2023, the same can't really be said 3 years later. If anything, giving each other a little space again almost seems like a good idea. So you have to wonder if the communal escapism factor that made Barbenheimer such a monumental success will play as much of a role in getting butts into theater seats this time around. Sure, plenty of movies have been performing super well as of late, and this includes Marvel's most recent outing, The Fantastic Four: First Steps, which grossed over $500 million globally back in 2025. But a lot can happen within a year's time. And really, with the economy being what it is as of late, double feature Escapism might just not be an affordable option like it was in 2023. Perhaps one of the most surprising things about Barbenheimer is the thematic thread that winds its way through both respective releases.
Do you guys ever think about dying?
Oppenheimer is a 3-hour-long biopic that follows the titular theoretical physicist as he builds the world's first atom bomb and worries deeply about its many implications, which include accidentally bringing about the apocalypse. Barbie, meanwhile, is an absurdist comedy that follows real-life versions of the classic Mattel dolls as they wrestle with questions about their identities and their place in the world. As such, an overarching theme of existentialism is present in both films. The novelty of two very different movies sharing the same beating heart is the skeleton that held the entire Barbenheimer thing together. Dune and Doomsday, on the other hand, are both basically what you see is what you get deals. Dune Part 3 follows now Emperor Paul Atreides as he navigates a brutal war of his own making and its many unintended consequences, all in an effort to save humanity from extinction. Avengers Doomsday is, well, an ensemble superhero movie. Enough said. In the end, any similarities between them are either expected or shrug-worthy. So the lack of a surprising connection that binds them together is yet another thing that Doomsday doesn't have going for it. Another thing to consider is that both Oppenheimer and Barbie are standalone films, at least for now. Oppenheimer obviously isn't something that can spawn a prequel or a sequel, but Barbie? Man, we really hope Gerwig isn't coerced into doing a Barbieverse thing. That would just make us scream, and not in a good way. Sorry, we digress. Dune and Doomsday, meanwhile, are very much the opposite, and they both carry some noteworthy baggage. The interesting thing about Dune Part 3 is that it's a sequel based on the events of the second book in the Dune series, Dune Messiah. As far as sci-fi fantasy series go, Dune is different from many others in that a disproportionate amount of readers only choose to read the first book. As one Redditor pointed out with the help of Goodreads, only about 5% of people who read the first book go on to finish the series. This, of course, only accounts for people who interact with Goodreads, but it's still a pretty telling stat. There's also the fact that there are 6 novels in the original Dune series, and that's not counting all the stuff Frank Herbert's son wrote after he died. Plus, director Denis Villeneuve has said that he's done after this Part 3. So what does that mean for the future? Are we just going to ignore the rest of the really weird stuff that happens in subsequent parts of the overall story? Is someone else going to pick up where he left off? Will the folks behind Dune Prophecy make a show? There's lots of uncertainty at this point, and it really makes you wonder if this will have an effect at the box office come December. And then there's the old MCU. Things haven't been going super well for Marvel these past few years, at least not as well as they used to back in the glory days. Whether or not you subscribe to the idea of superhero fatigue, you can't deny that the worrying cluster of poor box office performances that precede Doomsday casts a dark shadow over its release. Will the turnout be as impressive as the folks at Disney hope? We'll just have to wait and see. As we said before, it's more likely than not that Dune and Doomsday will both end up performing well. Dune Part 2 made a larger profit than Dune Part 1, and every Avengers movie is killed at the box office. In fact, all of the Avengers movies appear in the top 20 highest-grossing films of all time list.
Avengers! Assemble.
The inherent problem, then, would be the fact that the whole Doomsday thing muddles the stats and gives both Warner Brothers and Disney the wrong idea. Instead of acknowledging that both films were successful on their own merits, it's very possible they'll assume that the joint release was the overarching reason for their collective success, and thus leap headfirst into an annoying future defined by all sorts of bonkers box office pairings, each one more confounding than the last. Don't get us wrong, we're not saying that the idea of joint releases is bad by default. What we're saying is that this tactic could end up going off the rails and subsequently ruin the box office performances of movies that would have done just fine if they'd been released on their own. It's also worth noting that Oppenheimer and Barbie are far from the first pair of major films released on the same day. There's Blade Runner and The Thing, both released on June 25, 1982. There's Ghostbusters and Gremlins, both released on June 8, 1984. There's Jumanji and Heat, both released on December 15, 1995. There's The Matrix and 10 Things I Hate About You, both released on March 31, 1999. It's impossible to know for sure how much these pairings contributed to each other's success at the box office, if at all. But one thing's for sure, they performed well without being smashed together into a snazzy buzzword.